This is the Modern Mastery Unleashed podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, for another amazing episode. We are super excited for today because we have a very special guest, Rachel Wayte. Rachel is the world-renowned sound healer, energy healer, and spiritual channel for purpose-driven, high-achieving professionals and leaders who are ready to unleash the full potential and power so they can fulfill their dreams and make the massive contributions that they are here to make. So with that, welcome, Rachel.
Wow.
Because I've worked with Rachel personally, and I am super excited to have her. And Paul and I, I can't even say it again because I will. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's so lovely to hear. I'm really excited to be here. Even just chatting to you before we started, I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I don't know what we're going to say, but I just know it's going to be amazing.
Well, that's just it. I mean, you are on a massive mission, and Rachel and I actually we met years ago in a container that we were both in. And I've just loved seeing your journey unfold ever since. And you have, and I know we'll get into it for our listeners, because you're in the perfect place because we're all on this mission to really help, the entrepreneurs, leaders of today to really step into their highest version of themselves, break through all of those limitations. And you do it in such a unique way that I can't wait to get into it. So maybe we kick off and say, this episode's all about transforming life, finding healing, and really tuning in. And I know that there are times where some of us feel like we're kind of hitting a plateau in our lives, or we feel that we're just a bit lost or a bit disenchanted. And I'll let you kind of define what the plateau was for you, but I know that this is really personal to your story. So I'd love to know, how did seeing your life plateau at the age of 40 help you create this positive change in your life? Like, let's just start there, because I think that's a great place to start.
What a great question. So I remember it quite clearly. So I'd say in my 30s, I did struggle. There was anxiety I had to overcome in my 30s. And I think that was to do with and we'll get to my 40s in a minute, but I think this might help. That was to do with not doing what I was meant to be doing. And I was in a job that didn't serve me. I was in the corporate world. And I remember so I had to deal with a lot of anxiety initially, because I was doing something that I wasn't meant to be doing, but I was doing it anyway. And so I was driving miles and miles on the motorway, doing that commute on the motorway and those things. And I ended up having panic attacks in my car. I would be driving on the motorway and having panic attacks. Yeah. How scary is that? And that was my body sort of telling me, you're really not meant to be doing this, Rachel, but you're doing it anyway. So that was what happened to me in my 30s. And I overcame that. I got out of the corporate world, and I actually trained to be a holistic therapist, which was my segue into what I'm, beginning to open the doors into what I'm doing now. And I had been running, and so I ran my own business for about 6 or 7, probably maybe even 8 years as a holistic therapist. So when I'm coming up to my 40s, it's really interesting. From the outside, people probably looking and going, what can Rachel possibly have to complain about? She's not she's got out of her job that she wasn't helping her, that a lot of people sometimes are unhappy in. I wasn't doing that. I'm married, I've got a home, we've got a young daughter. So outwards looking in, everyone must be thinking, gosh, she's doing okay, but inwardly, I wasn't doing okay. And I think that's what we don't often show to the world, that what's going on inside, because inwardly, I'm looking outwardly going, God, look at everyone else. They're so successful. They've got these amazing careers. You know, I got a young daughter. I'm really not, I felt like I wasn't where everybody else was. I wasn't earning the money I wanted to be earning. I didn't feel like I was truly fulfilling my whole potential. I didn't know what it was at the time. So I was sort of coming across these episodes of just low depression. And I want to share this because in case people are thinking, gosh, you know what, I'm feeling that too. And I thought there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. So I was coming across a lot of depression. I was crying a lot of the time. I was frustrated. And I was like, I didn't know what to do about it. I just knew that I was turning 40 and there was something more, but I didn't know what that was. So I didn't know what to do about it. So it's just like this, sort of like this permanent cycle of feeling low, feeling depressed, sort of then having moments of feeling okay because I was, you know, it was like a yo-yo going up and down and up and down and up and down, and still suffering from some anxiety. Actually, that came back as well, which was interesting. And I remember just sort of, and it was and I shared this story before. It was my husband that really helped me through this moment because we were in the kitchen and I was crying. And he was we'd be having these conversations, we'd be going around in circles and nothing was changing. And he actually said to me, because I was there, you know, how am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? I don't feel happy, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff was coming out. And he sort of looked at me and he said, but Rachel, do you really want to change? Because from where I'm looking, it doesn't seem like it, because nothing's happening and we keep going round in these circles. And he said that and I went, oh, hold on a second. I was waiting for what that triggered in me was I thought I was waiting for all kinds of different things to happen in order for me to feel better. I was waiting for my husband to rescue me, him to suddenly like have this loads of money coming in, or I was waiting for someone to come and find me and discover me and make me happy. And that conversation, that what he said to me then made me realize that I was the one who had to do something about it, and I could do something about it. And so I went on this journey then of sort of like looking inwards. This is when the inward journey really began of what can I do about this? How can I change how I'm turning up? It's simple things like, you know, getting up in the morning and meditating, getting up and setting an intention. Really, I went inwards from that moment onwards. And from that moment on, and since then I've been clearing out my own limitations, my own blocks, my own thoughts, my own behaviors. And that conversation, I know a lot of change happens, and is what shifted everything. It's when I realized that I was the one in control and I could do something about it. And I had to do something about it.
Amazing.
That makes sense.
It makes total sense. And Paul and I say this all the time, like, no one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what I was waiting for, to be saved.
Yeah.
I think it's part of our conditioning though, isn't it? I mean, we know this, don't we, Nat and Rachel's, that I was thinking about this the other day, and from the moment we go to school, we get our perception of what's right or wrong or what's good and bad from other people, from our teachers. We do our best bit of work and we give it to the teacher. They judge it as, well, that's either good or bad, or someone's done better than that. So therefore, we don't feel good. So we're always seeking an external validation or an external event to change our state and how we feel and our actions. And so, you know, by the time we become an adult, that's well conditioned in that we're continually looking outside. And it's that fantastic story just brought to mind of Wayne Dyer, who I love. And he tells a story about losing his car keys in the house, and he goes outside to where there's a street light on, and he starts searching around by the street light, and his neighbor comes out and he says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I've lost my car keys." He said, "Well, I'll help." And then he asked him, and he said, "Where have you lost your keys?" And he said, "In the house." And he said, "What are you looking out here for?" But that's exactly what we do. There's an internal problem and we look outside continually, don't we, to try and solve the problem when we have to go within. But it's what we avoid, don't we? We avoid that work all the time until until that moment when you realize I have the power, I'm the architect of my life, and I can make these changes and just set a clear intention of what I want and what feels good and right, and make those positive steps. And like I say, no one else is going to do it. But it's a moment of like realize, it's awareness, isn't it? You become aware of that moment, that actually me being caught in these patterns and thoughts and feelings is also paying off, because it means that I don't have to move. I don't have to make progress when I'm hanging on to that story, because I've become a victim. Not in that sense, because I know that's quite a strong loaded word, but you're essentially powerless. So you've given your power away to an external force, haven't you, and not take it. But when you take it back and you take full responsibility, i.e. your ability to respond, why wouldn't you want to take full responsibility? Well, I want to take my full ability to respond. Absolutely, I do. That's where our power lies. And what an interesting moment. I think a lot of people are struggling right now and feeling exactly as you described. And so what would you say to anybody right now who's stuck or struggling? Or what would their actionable steps be for you that would help that along?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And as I'm feeling into it, I think sometimes just to acknowledge that it's okay to be feeling what you're feeling. So I think sometimes when you're feeling that low feeling, or you're feeling stuck, or you feel like there's something wrong with me, or there's something not right about what I'm feeling. And I think sometimes just acknowledge initially, do you know what? I'm feeling this, doesn't feel great, but I'm going to allow myself to feel it, because I think what we can often do when we get into those moments is when we can find the ways to avoid it. We can find the ways to numb it. We can what I mean by that is, we'll suddenly get, some people, they get really, really, really busy, so they don't have to deal with the emotions that are coming up. Some people, obviously, they turn to alcohol. Some people turn to all kinds of understandable ways to try and numb what we're actually feeling. And I think just to have that moment of acknowledgement and acceptance of this is how I'm feeling and it's okay, actually begins to it begins to give you the power back in that sense, because you can begin to allow it. It gives the emotions and the feelings the permission to actually move on, because a lot of us are scared to feel what's coming up. We don't want to go there. We don't want to know we don't want to acknowledge what's underneath. We don't want to go on that journey. So we try and avoid it. So I suppose my first actionable step would be to not avoid it. And I know that sounds like but to actually just acknowledge and be okay. This is how I'm feeling, and accept it. And actually that can bring a lot of relief. That can bring a lot of relief to you and into your body. And then it doesn't have to be this massive, like I'm gonna start changing all my habits and all my routines all in one go. What's one small thing that you can do to perhaps just begin? So for me, to begin to make those little changes. So for me, it was, and this is because it worked well for me. I used to just sort of wake up in the morning, especially when my daughter was younger, and I just sort of like roll out of bed and I just get on and I let my day take over me. I wasn't in control of my day. I was just sort of going through the motions. And I think for me, it was giving myself initially that time to myself to get up and give myself that time in the morning to meditate, to write down what I was feeling. It was actually making myself a priority was the next thing that really helped me. And then it was beginning to look at my habits and my behaviors and seeing where in that am I sabotaging myself? Where am I trying to numb out and not look inwards and help myself move forward? So I stopped drinking. I don't drink. I mean, I have the odd tiny small amount of red wine every so often, but you know, I don't drink of an evening. And I'm not saying that's not for everybody, but that was one thing that I knew was numbing me, and it wasn't helping me move forwards. So I don't know if that helps, but that's what it was: acknowledge and accept, and then look at my behaviors and what could I do about it to create some shifts and forward momentum.
It's massive. Thanks, Rachel. That's really good. And as you were talking, you know, when I'm reflecting on like the Wellness 360 framework, you know, you said a lot of things that you have all these different life elements that are so interconnected. You know, you talked about fulfillment, which is the internal layer of purpose. You talked about like emotional intelligence, which is, you know, the internal layer of water. And you talked about going within, which is the internal layer of spirituality. And so, you know, I like to kind of, and you also talked about body, which, you know, the inner layer there is like, how can you use your body as a laboratory? So listening in on how is this making me feel, you know, like, and acknowledging those feelings. And I like to say low vibe, high vibe, vibrational feelings rather than like positive or negative.
Yeah,
because I think it empowers you, and you sort of look at emotions as being equal and as informants almost of, oh, these are signals. Like, this is just feedback for me to be able to say, oh, when I do these things, it makes me feel this way. And when I don't do those things, or if I do those other things, then, you know, it makes me feel disconnected or, you know, stuck, or, you know, all of those feelings where you're like, well, I need to know what that feels like, because that will allow me to then make the next choice. And that's what well-being is all about, is just those choices that lead you to a happier, healthier, more fulfilling life. So those were amazing practical steps, and I think everyone can relate to that. I mean, even as you were talking about your journey, like, I so resonated with you, you know, because that's similar to what I was experiencing, like leaving my corporate and just tuning in, like, why do I feel so flat right now? Like, everything on the outside is amazing, but internally it's like I'm struggling super bad.
Yeah, and we're scared to show that sometimes, aren't we? And tell people and acknowledge that, because that means we're being vulnerable, and that can put you in a state of, oh, we're not used to sort of feeling vulnerable. So it's hard to sometimes acknowledge that, because we look at everyone else and we might see thinking, well, they're doing great, so why should I? But actually, if you open up and you start talking about it, I think it would be amazing how many other people suddenly go, oh, thank God you said that, because I've been feeling that as well. And it gives permission and that's why I share about what I've been through, and I don't mind talking about it, or I'll do a live about it, because it gives other people permission to go, oh, she's normal, you know, she's because I do the healing work that I do. Some people might think, oh, she's somewhere way up there all the time, but I'm human too, and I go through just as much as everyone else goes through. And I think I'm happy to share it, because I think it gives others permission to feel what they're feeling as well.
100%. And I've experienced it as well, you know, but that came from the death of the ego for me. So because I think a bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. And so
I love that.
Yeah, I think pain's a great purifier, and negative emotions are trying to tell you something, and the body's always keeping score. And I know we speak about this all the time, but because, you know, these aches and pains and things that are happening, stomach digestive issues, all sorts of things are trying to tell you something. But we're not good at listening, you know, we're just not. It's just one of those things that we really need to be better at. And you alerted to that, you know, in an amazing way. But that's absolutely true. Like, and I think if you feel like everything's going so well externally, all that's going so well. So who am I to not feel great about it inside? Does that make me seem ungrateful? But there has to be a space to say, I don't feel great.
Yes.
And I do feel absolutely, I resonate with your stories 100%, because I think that's where mostly burnout arises. When you do a 70, 80-hour week for work you don't find meaningful, that's not making a contribution, it doesn't fit with your life's purpose and your higher self, and you're not growing, that's when you feel burnout to a savage degree of the body, the cortisol that is just ravaging the body from doing that. But you can put in a 70, 80-hour week in a cause that you find meaningful, that's giving contribution to the world, uplifting the lives of others, that fits your purpose and like higher self, and you don't feel burnout because it's just something you love to do. You're in flow state. You're living your truth and your nature, of which gives you energy, doesn't it? So not suggesting that that's the way to go, but it's two totally opposite ends of the scale, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And personally, I love, I'm not one, I can't function on 70, 80 hours a week, but I know, but now I'm doing what I meant. Actually, now this is interesting. I'd say now I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. I'm doing less.
Absolutely.
But and there's really interesting, because doing less, there's a guilt that comes up inside. Interestingly, isn't there? There's a guilt that comes up. I should be doing more. Why should be doing more? I should. There's that program still in there. There's stuff for me always to work on, and that comes up. I should be. Why it can't be this easy? Surely it can't be. There's that comes up. So there's always interesting kinds of sabotage that comes in, and tells from programming, from society, from how we're brought up. So I've had to more navigate that. I don't have to work as much, and I can still allow the money to come in and not to feel guilty about that.
It's all conditioning again, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you can work, you can do 4 hours, you could do 4 hours a day of great work. The mastery that you seek and the contribution of 4 or 5 great hours. Absolutely. That's what I'm all about. Because I think if you're constantly going, you don't have perspective and reflection, and also the additional external life elements that give you balance and perspective and insight, because you don't have the space for insight if your head's always down to the grindstone.
You're right. I was just something I wanted to share. I was literally just listening to, I've been doing some past life regression stuff. You don't need to go into that, but I was just listening to the lady who's teaching it. And she was just saying, you need time for that connection and that higher self to come in. And there's so much external stimulation at the moment, everywhere, the news, your phone, everywhere, and we don't give ourselves any space or time to actually connect and listen to our intuition, listen to our gut feelings, listen to get the guidance. So we'd spend so much time in our head and not in our heart, and so it reminded me to switch that off so that actually I can hear what I'm meant to be doing next.
Well, that's a hot question that I've got for you right now.
I preempted it.
Unbelievable. Woven into the fabric of the question up and coming. So thank you, Rachel.
Lovely.
But that's a question. So for our listeners and viewers on YouTube, how can we better connect with our higher self to receive that guidance?
Wow, it's almost like I read your piece of paper from over here, isn't it, before you spoke that question. So that is what I would say. So, and that's how it helps. Sometimes, this is my trigger. When I'm feeling like the guilt or that I should be doing something else, I'll turn to my phone. I will turn to, right, what someone posted on Facebook, what someone posted on Instagram, and I will sometimes go and read the news. I never watch the news, but sometimes I will go and read it. And that's my way of actually disconnecting and that and not connecting inwards. And I recognize that. So one way to do it is to, because the internet's always on, isn't it? It's always on. We're always on. And I think just to give yourself time to have no distractions. And a lot of us might feel that difficult because you've not got your phone pinging at you. You've just turn it all off, or has set a limit on when you're going to turn it on in the morning. Maybe you don't need to turn it on first thing in the morning. Give yourself that time and that space. Because what I find really interesting about that is it might not be that when I'm having no distractions around me that the answers come through or the guidance comes through. But what I tend to find is because I've given myself that space and I've not allowed myself to get distracted or sort of bury my emotions and not feel them, later on in the day, I'll suddenly get this feeling or this hearing of, right, Rich, you need to do this next, or you need to do this next, or the answer will come to what I was asking about. So that's why I give myself the time to switch off, to turn off all the distractions. And, you know, maybe I will meditate then. Maybe actually during that time, I'll go and clean the house. I'll go for a walk. I'll walk the dog. And my guidance, like I said, doesn't always literally come then when I'm having, because you sit there and think, right, I should hear what I need to hear now. You know, why isn't it coming in? You know, I've not got anything on. I'm waiting for the intuition. Why is it not coming? But actually, yeah, I'm ready. Exactly. It doesn't always work like that. But it does what I tend to find in giving myself that space, I will then get the clarity when I'm not expecting it. And it will then come when I'm making the dinner, or I'm, you know, having a conversation with someone. I'll suddenly hear what I need to hear. And that's being open. And that's what quiet space gives me, the opportunities to allow what I need to come in. But it's not always when you expect it.
That's excellent, isn't it? I mean, that's been quite pivotal for me. Stillness being the key. It's the simplest thing to do, but probably the most challenging right now. And I think, yeah, you've got to set yourself up to win. So I charge my phone downstairs. And so when I wake up in the morning, I come into the office and I'm in total darkness. So fortunately, I know where I'm going. So you can't have your house like total wipeout. Otherwise, you'd be falling over everything. But I don't want to be too awake. So I want my mind to be in still that lovely brainwave state, that I can access what I want to access and program what I want to program. But I do a silence meditation when I get up. But that means I've got to set myself up, because if my phone's in the room, I could be tempted to pick it up. So I think just an actionable thing. I mean, I'm up to an hour and a half now before I pick my phone up. So it's that journal, a quick bit of cold immersion, and I'm on to priority task of eating the frog, the thing that I'm avoiding the most, I do first. But that type of guidance is really starting to help. And so I think that's what an excellent discussion in the day and age where our addiction to distraction is dissolving our dynamism. And I really believe that. And so just picking up on that fantastic point of intuition and inner guidance, which we all seek, and we're all becoming more aware of that now for sure. How do we know the difference between intuition and what is fear?
Now, you know, you said you weren't going to tell me what the questions were. I wish you told me now. No, let me. No, it's good. It's good. How can we? Tell the difference between intuition and. So you mean when fear is holding you back from doing something?
Yeah. So where it could be, my intuition's saying this isn't for me, but when it's actually the thing, like I can't remember who said the quote now, but the fear, what lies in the cave of fear is the gold you're looking for. So the magic that you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. basically.
Okay.
So is it something that what I'm avoiding the most is probably what I need to do the most?
Yeah.
Just from my own personal experience and wisdom from people that I've worked with. But how do we feel into what's the intuition and what's, it's because it's
Yeah.
quite a tricky emotion, isn't it?
It is a trick. It's a very tricky, and there's different things that I want to say on this. I think one of them is, if you keep being presented with a similar fear and you keep avoiding it, then that's probably something that you should look at, because it keeps coming up and up and up and up, and
Yes.
and it probably keep coming until you feel into it and go, actually, right, this is something that I want to look at, I want to work through. And I think sometimes when we're unsure about, when we're unsure about, is this really something I shouldn't be doing, or is it this is just my fear holding me back? Sometimes it's good to think, so is it that loud ego voice yelling at me, telling me not to do this? Is that because when it's really loud and it's coming from the head, we probably know that that's the ego trying to hold us back and stop us from growing. So I think if you ever and I suppose if you're ever making a decision based on fear, then it's generally not a good place to make a decision from. So sometimes it's good to just take a step back and actually, if you can, begin to just before you make the decision, and just to internally analyze this and go, hold on a second. Why is this fear showing up? What is it trying to teach me? And just take a step back from it before you make the decision. Because often because we need to quieten this so we can actually go inwards and actually feel, is this the right step for me? Because we often use the fear as a barrier to stop us from growing, to stop us from doing something that could be potentially scary. And what I mean by scary is, so there's all kind of things coming through right now. So I was trying to hold on a second. So often the ego is there. I think often we get cross with the ego, don't we? Because we think it's a bad thing. But the ego is actually just doing all that it can to protect you, because something happened to you, probably when you were very, very tiny, to cause you to feel like you shouldn't do that thing. So maybe someone's, been asked to, speak on stage, let's say. And then when they were tiny, they spoke up and said something, and then they got laughed at for it. They got shouted at for it. They got told that they were too much. They got told that what they said wasn't right. And so they decided to protect themselves and go, actually, okay, hold on, I won't do that again. So when I get asked to do that, so that I don't get laughed at, so that I don't get humiliated or whatever it is, I'm going to protect myself. So the ego is if we can love the ego and thank it for showing up, because it's trying to protect you and look after you. But actually at that point go, but I'm not that little child anymore. I do want to grow. I do want to expand. I do want to evolve. I do want to have a better life. I do want things to change. I know I'm saying a lot, but I'm hoping this is helping. Then you can actually analyze that fear and go, actually, love that fear, and actually give that fear permission to be there. You can feel the fear, you can feel it, and then perhaps just allow that fear to move on, and then make your decision, if that makes sense. So almost like process all that fear that's coming up, and then think, actually, am I going to die doing this? Probably not. Most likely, you're not going to. So why not try it? And if you fail, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't get it as right as you want it to. It doesn't matter that you're not perfect. You're moving forwards. And you're going to be so happy when you've done it, and you'll be so relieved that you did it. And so that's what I want to say in a long shot.
I love it. It's about leaning into the fear.
Yes.
And doing it anyway. And I think I heard this recently, and it was saying, when you have new problems, Like that's what you kind of want, isn't it? Like you don't ever want to just not have new problems to deal with, because then that's not an indication that you are moving forward. Like if you are moving forward, you're going to have additional problems. You're going to have new challenges and new opportunities.
Yes.
And so I love that reframe about or just what you were saying, you know, when is it intuition? When is it fear? And I think we all know when it is fear because of how it makes us feel. Like, you know, when it's a good gut feeling, you're like, oh yeah. I mean, it's like this excited, like you're more excited than you are nervous. Like it's still like, oh my gosh, I'm going to say yes to this speaking on stage. Like, this is crazy. But you know, it's like, it's a good lean in. It feels good, even though you're super nervous, but it's like a good, excited yes.
Yeah.
Versus,
versus
like when it's not, you're like, this is bad. Like it just feels not right somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
And sometimes you have to go with that not feeling right. So for example, like I said to you, I used to have panic attacks in the car driving on the motorway. So I avoided it for a hell of a long time because I was like, I don't want that to happen again. You know, and that was like a practical, you know, I'm driving, like this is, you know, I've got to make sure I'm cognizant here. But I still don't particularly really enjoy it. I don't go, woohoo, I'm going to go driving on the motorway. But I did sit with my fear, and I remember going back onto the motorway and actually just as I was driving, allowing myself to feel what all the fear was all about. I was very I was focused, so I knew what I was doing, but I was also allowing myself to feel it, to feel what it wasn't really about going on the motorway. It was about other things, but I had to just sort of sit with it and allow all those uncomfortable feelings to come up. And to be with them and know that's okay, and know that, you know, maybe it's never going to be something that I really embrace doing. But because what I noticed was that me not doing that, I was actually putting limitations around myself as to how far I could go, because I wouldn't go that. I won't go there because I can't drive there. I won't go there because I can't. So it was actually physically putting limitations around myself, and that was probably holding my life back in some way. And although that fear was trying to keep me safe from perhaps not growing too much, I also knew inside that I wanted to grow and I had to grow. Yeah. So I had to work through that.
Well, your world starts to shrink, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it did. It started to shrink, and I would go less and less. I would only go like within the certain boundaries of where I lived in the car, and then if I went beyond that, I felt scared. Yeah. So I had to really look at what that was.
So I mean, I think you're reading my question somewhere along the line here.
I am.
I don't know what's going on here, but we'll sort that. Obviously, we know that you're magic, but I was going to say it reminds me of, this is like human behaviour, that somehow we wait until we're stood at the precipice before we do something about it. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the region beta paradox.
No, tell me.
But it's like, if you were going to walk, if you had to travel a mile, you might walk it. But if you had to do 2 miles, you'd probably just get in the car and do 2 miles quicker than you would a mile. And so what I'm saying is, like, sometimes you need your situation to be worse than what it is to get you to move. Yeah. Because when you're in actually an okay place, it can be the most difficult place to move from.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. And I think because you're comfortable, isn't it? You know it. It's safe. And that's why people have rock bottoms. That's why the universe, if you don't move from that, but you know that you want to, some people, you know, and you know you want to evolve, and you know you want to grow, yeah. At some point, the universe will start showing you little signs initially. And then at some point, if you're still not getting it, something's going to come in and and I don't know what that is, but to get you to make that leap, to make that jump, or whatever it is, and to make you uncomfortable, to make you go, actually, do you know what? I actually have to do something about this now.
Oh, totally. I think so many people will resonate with that.
Yeah.
But But my question was going to be, how can we transcend limiting beliefs and past traumas so that you can step into the person that you were born to be? So, because I think we're born into utter perfection and conditioned into mediocre, and then we pick up all that doubt, disbelief, conditioning as we go through about what we can be, do, and have in the world. But what separates us from who we are now and who we truly are is those slights that we pick up, the micro and macro trauma. So is there a way of, in your experience, processing that personally, that our listeners and viewers could potentially action on their own to begin to work through that?
Yes. Not everyone has got access to someone who can just sort of like peel it out for them. So I get that. I understand that. So first of all, I'm just feeling into this because the signal really for me, or the listeners can, is from in that I want them to recognize is generally is your emotions, like your how you're doing and how you're feeling and how things are. You can just generally tell by how you're feeling. So if they are, for whatever's happened to us growing, we've all picked up on, like you said, a lot of major, a lot of minor trauma growing up, and that affects how we believe. It affects what we think we can achieve. It affects our growth. And I think, when you become aware of that, you can go, actually, there's something I can do about this. Therefore, this isn't just how my life has to be. This isn't who I actually am inside. Actually, that's quite liberating, because you think, actually, I don't have to stay in this rut. I don't have to stay feeling like this. I don't have to stay where I am. There's something I can actually grow from this. So that's liberating in a way. Then you can know, actually, this isn't who I am. This might be something I got told. This might be something I picked up on. This might be because something happened to me. But I don't need to stay in that story of it. And I don't need to stay in a loving way, the victim of it. And I mean that in a really loving way.
Yeah.
You're not trapped by this. You can do something about it. And that's actually really empowering. And then in terms of like when the emotions come up, so maybe it's grief, or it's sadness, or it's limitations, or it's frustration, whatever it is, I want you to always remember that you are not your emotions. Your emotions are not you. Your emotion is simply an energy in motion. So actually, we're meant to feel our emotions. We're meant to feel them. We're meant to process them, and they're meant to move on. But what can often happen, especially, if we're not, when we're younger and as we've grown up, is we for some reason aren't always able to process the emotions that come up, because we expressed our anger when we were a child, and we were told, you're too much, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. So instead of expressing the emotion the next time we feel it, because we then scared that we're not going to be accepted by expressing the anger or whatever it is that we're feeling, we hold on to it. And then we learn to hold on to the emotions, and we learn to hold on. We don't process them. But it's very easy it is quite simple to process your emotions. So if you're feeling, let's say you're feeling let's say it's depression, sadness. I want you to just take a moment to recognize it and sit with it and acknowledge the emotion, because when you acknowledge the emotion, you give it space to be there. So you sit with it, okay, I'm just going to sit with this emotion of whatever it is that you're feeling. And then at that point, what you then don't do is go into the story of it, the drama of it. Oh, I'm so depressed because I'm not happy, and someone's broke my heart, and this has happened, and this has happened, and this has happened. Because then you cling on to it and it can't move on. Then you're going into the story of it, and your body's not able to release it. So if you can just allow yourself to feel it and acknowledge it and get really, really present with it and just sit with it, that's how actually you give that emotion the opportunity to be felt, to be heard, to be acknowledged. Then you can breathe it out. Then it can move on. And that's how you can become, it's about becoming very present and aware as to what you're feeling, rather than when you feel that emotion that you don't like, rushing to something to stop it, rushing to, right, I'm going to get into my diary and I'm going to get myself really, 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 really busy so I don't have to deal with this. Or, you come home and you just spend the evening watching the telly because you're trying to avoid these things. If you can get really present with it, I know it takes work, and it's not going to all perhaps unravel overnight, but it's about, for me, it's about becoming present to what you're feeling, allowing yourself to feel it, not going into the drama and the story of it, but giving that emotion space to be and move and release on, so it can move in and it can move on. That's how you can start to begin to move forwards.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's lovely. And I think to allow emotions to be seen and heard is very important, isn't it? I think it was Sigmund Freud who said that repressed emotions that you don't deal with come back later in ugly ways. And I think that's very true. And but of course, we're never taught how to deal with this at all. And so it's not that we're bad people or anybody's a bad person. It's just that you don't know what you don't know. And that's the whole premise of modern self-mastery. That's the whole point of it. It's going inwards and mastering the inner game so you can master the outer world. But ultimately, it's about how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. That's personal development.
And it's not always easy. I mean, I have days and I think, oh God, I feel like, and sometimes you think I've worked through it, and then sometimes oh my God, I feel like this again. And it can feel really unpleasant. And sometimes I just go, right, this is what I'm feeling today. I feel like shit. Sorry, I don't normally swear, but there you go. But I feel dreadful today. But if I give myself to feel permission to feel really dreadful, generally, it will move on, and it will free itself if I just sit with it. Or I go for a walk, or I do some exercise, or I do some meditation, something, but it tends to move on a lot quicker than it used to.
I love that definition of emotions, energy and motion. It's just simple, and we don't have to scare of it anymore, because it is an energy. It's just an energy and a vibration, and we just feel it. Totally. And I know, like, I said at the very beginning that, I've had the pleasure of working with you, Rachel, one-on-one. And I know that you have very special talents and training when it comes to sound. And I want to just touch on this because, I wanted to ask you, how can the power of sound change someone's frequency and vibration? We're talking about that a lot, frequency, vibration.
Yes.
And so that they can heal their body and their emotions, which we all know is part of your sort of like your life elements, your wellness 360, your well-being. I'd love for you to dive into that, because
I will do my best.
Superpowers are just amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. So, it's really interesting, because I'm not a scientist, and I don't come from it and I can't regale loads of sort of scientific sort of, like, it's not my forte. It's not, but I do I've come to understand how it works. I've done research, I've done reading, because when I started using my voice, I knew that I needed to try and understand why. I just knew that I have a trained classical voice, and I just knew intuitively that I had to start using my voice in order to help people to heal. But trying to explain that to people is like, what do you mean? You need to sing to me and it's going to make me feel better. And it's like, but if you just come from it, if you just take a step back and go, actually, when you're feeling low, when or when you want to change your mood, what do you often do? You go to music, don't you? You'll put a track on and it will help you cry, or you will put a track on and it will help you, like, pick your energy up. So if you think of it in that sense, music can really have a big effect on you. And then when you come to it in terms of thoughts of emotion and frequency and vibration. So our body has its own frequency, it has its own vibrations. Our emotions have their own frequency and they have a vibration. And when you can always imagine it like an orchestra. So when an orchestra is playing well, doesn't it sound beautiful and in harmony? Imagine your body's like that, and you imagine your body as an orchestra. When everything is well, when everything is flowing, it sounds great. And then if someone just starts playing slightly out of tune, even if it's just one thing, there's disharmony and there's dis-ease within the orchestra, within the sound. And that's the same within your body. So what sounds can come in and do, it can come in and really, if there's something in your body that's not vibrating as it should, there's an emotion in there that's not there, there's some pain in your body, the sound can really come in and it can reach those parts that aren't vibrating as they should and clear them and release them and help bring everything back into resonance and alignment. So in a nutshell, that's how sound can work. And the way it works with me is if someone, often happens if a lot of people come to me and they've got a lot of repressed emotions that their bodies have been too scared to express, whether that's anger, whether that's fear, whatever it is. And actually, I'm able through the sound to express that for them. So if the body will talk to me and it'll be like, there's all this anger going on in here and I don't know how to get it out. So sometimes when I'm working with clients, I make the most vile sounds because I'm actually expressing that anger for someone who's never, ever been able to express it. And I can actually get that out for them with the sounds that I create, which is phenomenal. And then sometimes if there's like grief and there's sadness and there's some emotion on that side that they've been holding on to them, I will sing to them the most loving, beautiful sounds that just reach their heart and let their heart finally let go of whatever sadness it's been holding on to.
It's just incredible. Honestly, for anyone listening, you just have to experience this. Like, take my word for it. You just have to experience it. And I will say, because, and I know we've kind of touched on it, but your body will, like, Rachel said it, when you're in pain, like especially hip pain, if you have a lot of hip pain, and I'm saying this from experience, you tend to hold on to a lot of emotions, or you have a lot of emotion there. And I remember finding yin yoga, like when years ago, went to this teacher training for yin, and I'd never even heard of yin before. And it was where, you find that stillness through poses, because your whole, like, yin is different than yang yoga in the sense that it's passive, it's still, it's cold, it's calm. Like it's not your typical, vinyasa or hatha yoga. But it was interesting to see, the hip poses or the release poses. You feel the space opening, and that's kind of what you do with your voice, is that you create that space. So, it is in a physical way, but it's not in a physical way. Like it's not like a stretch that releases it, but it's your voice, like your vibration just will open, or just, it's just incredible. I can't even, I don't even have the words.
It's very hard. It's very hard to put the words on it. I appreciate that. I really do. It's like, as you were describing it, it's like an unraveling. It's like an unraveling that happens. It's an unraveling, and I see that happening inside. So I see that happening inside people's bodies, and it's like this unraveling that goes on. That suddenly not only goes, because as you let go of the emotion, the body can unravel and physically heal itself at the same time.
And what else I love about your work, Rachel, is that, you get into the energy body, the chakra system, like, whether it's like you were saying, if someone's been afraid to speak, maybe they have something in their throat chakra that that is just like trapped energy that just needs to be released. And I just think your work is fascinating. And we're so grateful that you were here to just give our listeners, our viewers, even a glimpse of your expertise and your magic. And
thank you.
You guys have to go and check Rachel out. She's amazing. We'll put all of her links and everything into the show notes below.
Well, I think Rachel could be inundated if what you're stating there Nat, is that you can knock an hour's worth of yin yoga on the head if you just go and see Rachel. She'll swear that away.
But it's interesting what you're saying about the voice, because, you know, my voice is one of the ways that I obviously help people to heal. And so I do get a lot of clients that come to me who are stuck in their throat and in their voice. And there's a lot of, because they're not expressing who they are, they're scared to express, they're not fully expressed, they're not fully themselves. So there's a lot of work. I'm doing this with my hands now, and it's like there's a lot. I don't know whoever's listening, but there's some unlocking going on. There's like some unlocking that a lot of unlocking happens in the throat, so that people can. I often see lots of stuff stuck in here because people have quietened it down and they have not fully expressed. So yeah, there's a lot of work that people need to do in their voices to let themselves come out and fully express themselves.
Absolutely amazing. And what I've learned in my brief history working with energy healers and spiritual healers, which has been fantastic and just the most amazing thing that I can't recommend highly enough. But I realized that there are some ancestral patterns that we're totally unconscious of. That keep showing up because we haven't learned the lesson. We're getting into something very deep here. But we don't mess about on this podcast. We get stuck in. So of course this is not our first earth walk. I put my teeth back in. It's not our first earth walk here. It's not our first rodeo. So is there a way of clearing any karmic patterns that we can do on our own, or would we need to come and see somebody like yourself?
Interesting. Because so I do, obviously in the work that I do, I take people into generational trauma. I take them into past life trauma. Interestingly, I do think if you could do this on your own, if you're seeing repeating patterns coming up, and you're repeating traits, repeating something, and you're like, and you see it in your mom, or perhaps you see it in your dad, and you see it and you think, actually, this isn't mine, then I would sit with it and feel. You'd have to sort of sit quietly with it, maybe just go into a quiet meditative state, sit with it, and actually give it permission, because perhaps it wants to clear through you. Sometimes generational trauma, it wants to clear through you. I've seen on many occasions, if I'm doing this work with someone, I've seen rows and rows and rows and rows of generations waiting for this to get healed. They're like knocking on the door going, oh, hallelujah, thank goodness someone's working through this. And then I see it moving forward as well for like the future generations. So if you can, obviously we haven't got someone to help you do that. If you can just really sit with it and think, okay, what is this trait? What is this? Whether it's depression, often it's rooted in money. It can often be rooted in money. Maybe if you can just sit with that and allow and connect with your higher self at this point, allow your higher self to come in, feel that higher self around you, and give yourself permission to release whatever the trait is. Ask that your higher self come through and help you release this. I feel that would really help you begin to let some of that go and acknowledge it and release it. And when you see yourself behaving in those traits or feeling that worry about money coming in or whatever it is, just acknowledge that actually, no, this isn't mine. I don't need to hold on to this. I can release this and I can let this go. So that's how I work through something. If I've not got someone that I'm working with, that's how I work through it. I'll invite in my higher self to help me through this, to help me feel it and to help me release it. And I'll work through it that way.
Amazing. And if you haven't figured it out yet, best go and check out Rachel and what she does, because it is absolutely amazing. Thank you ever so much for that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely amazing today. We're so excited to have you on. You've exceeded our expectations.
Oh, bless you. It's been really lovely, really easy as well. You two are just so easy to talk to. And I think we opened this up in a way that we knew it would be a really divinely sort of guided conversation.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back because there was so much there.
Oh,
I would love it.
But yeah, thank you so much. And everyone, if you've got value from this, please like, subscribe, share this with anyone that needs to hear this, that needs to meet Rachel, that needs to get on the podcast. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.